Hey, welcome to a brand new episode of the Hustle for Good podcast and show. I'm super excited to have Chester Elton here. He's the co-author of Leading with Gratitude, which is a new book out on Harper Business, along with his co-author is Adrian Gostick. But we're so pleased to have Chester here with us to talk about his book. So how you doing, Chester?
I'm doing great. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, I'm super excited to have you here just because, as I told you before, is that I'm a leader and I love gratitude. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background? Like how did you end up here? Like, why are we talking? Like,
Yeah, a great question. I grew up in sales, and so I was always, very much involved in recognition and trying to hit those different levels and so on. So I was always a big fan of recognition and, that recognition of effort and achievement. Well, I left selling broadcast time in Manhattan. Actually, you and I talked. We both lived in Brooklyn there for a long time, and came to work for a recognition company actually in New Jersey. And so we would sell various recognition programs for years of service or sales, whatever it might be. And I start to ideate with our CEO. I said, if we could become the thought leaders in our space, it would make my job a lot easier. People would look at, how do you engage and reward and recognize your employees? And they would call us and I wouldn't have to cold call as much. And I said, thought leaders write books. So we should write the definitive book on employee recognition. He goes, oh, I love that idea. Write the book. And I said, well, actually, when I said write the book, I meant you should write the book. I should benefit from the book.
Sure.
And he said something that changed everything. He said, you're a smart guy, figure it out. And so he challenged me, and I started to think about it. And about a year went by. He called me again and said, I've been thinking about your book.
Yeah.
I've hired a writer. His name is Adrian Gostick. Get together, write the book. And so that was the start of a wonderful friendship. Adrian and I now have been writing for about 20 years on work on culture, engagement, leadership, and our latest book, Leading with Gratitude. As you know, the leader really sets the tone for the culture.
Yeah.
And what we discovered, and I think you'll enjoy this, being a leader that loves gratitude.
Yeah.
We kind of named the book after you, actually, Steve. Is that the difference between good leaders and extraordinary leaders? It was never their hard skills; it was always their soft skills.
Yeah.
Right. The skills that they had to communicate, engage, paint the roadmap, and so on. Number one in those soft skills, in our opinion, is the way they express gratitude for the people who work with and for them. That was the biggest differentiator. Fascinating, isn't it?
I mean, there are like studies that show that the more gracious you are, the more gratitude you have, like you're happier, you're healthier, right? Like you lose weight, have better relationship, like all of these things. And so, could you maybe talk back a little bit? Like at what point did you figure out that, all right, this is my thing and this is the lane that I'm going to go down?
Well, sure. Having grown up in a family that embraced gratitude and love and recognition, it was an easy transition for me. And then being in the recognition industry, it gave me access to a lot of really interesting companies that really embraced that idea. And then once we took a deep dive into the research, we did a lot of work with Willis Towers Watson and looked at some of the research that's in the common space that done by Gallup and Deloitte and so on. And then we actually even developed our own assessments, Steve, on what motivates people at work. What are their key motivators? And we've had like 75,000 people take that assessment.
Wow.
So as the deeper we got into the subject, the more interesting it got. And it became really obvious that it wasn't a nice to have if you're going to have a great culture or a great leader. It's very much a must have.
Yeah.
And those leaders that really embraced it got superior results. So to your point, yeah, it's a nice thing to do. It's a gracious thing to do, and it will help you personally. It also builds incredibly healthy business cultures.
Yeah.
And you see the increase in productivity, in innovation, in customer loyalty and customer satisfaction all go up when that is present.
In my organization, so I run a nonprofit called Stoked, and one of our core values is kudos, right? And so at the end of every meeting, we give kudos to somebody, right? And it's essentially gratitude, like we acknowledge that in one person, and we do our best to, and it's also our core values that we work with kids, and so we give kudos at the end of the program. And like, why don't more people do this, right? Like, I feel like the notion of purpose and intention in business is still this sort of woo-woo sort of thing. And like, why is corporate America, like, why are they hard asses?
Well,
and they think like a bigger pay raise is like a thing, you know?
Well, it's really interesting. In our book, Leading with Gratitude, we talk initially about the gratitude gap.
Yeah.
When we ask leaders, do you think you're really above average in giving gratitude? Almost 70% said yes.
Yeah.
And yet only 23% of their people agreed. So there's this gap. And we do debunk these myths. We take a whole section and say, for example, it's all about compensation. If we just get the comp right, everything else takes care of itself. Well,
yeah.
You're right. This idea of purpose and am I making a difference? Am I making impact are huge as well. Another common myth is, particularly I think now, in the unusual times we're living in, is that fear is the best motivator. You just put the fear of God in people. And in fact, if you dig deep into the numbers, 37% of employees said, yes, when I feel like my job's in jeopardy, I will work harder.
37%?
37%. 38% said that, yes, I work harder when I've got a boss that's really demanding. So there are numbers there. Now, here's what becomes interesting. When you say, if you have a leader that expresses gratitude on a regular basis, what's the number then? Well, the number jumps to 83%.
Yeah.
So you say, well, it's an absolute no-brainer. And yet I think there's still this sort of school of thought that says if we just pound on people and we pay them well, everything else will take care of itself. This fuzzy stuff has no place in this hard-charging business get stuff done. And that's where we say, well, look, the soft stuff is the hard stuff. Get the soft stuff right. The hard stuff will take care of itself. And we have numerous examples of companies that do it well that have extraordinary results.
So let's talk about a little bit about the book. Like what is the gap? Like dive deep a little bit more into it.
Yeah, the gap is the perception gap.
Mm-hmm.
As leaders, oftentimes we think we are very gracious. We think we're very giving. And yet, we have a database of just over 1 million engagement surveys, and almost always near the bottom because I feel rewarded and recognized for the work I do on a daily basis.
Interesting.
And so, we have this myth around, look, I would do it more if I had more time. We're doing more with less. We're checking the boxes. We're getting the hard stuff done. And here's what's so fascinating, Steve, is we found that the best leaders spent maybe an hour a week in a 50-hour week, 2% of their time actually doing it. They were intentional. They were disciplined. We talk about being frequent, being timely, and don't be afraid.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be afraid that you're doing it too much. Nobody does it too much.
Yeah.
I often laugh. I said, when was the last time anybody went home from work and said to their partner or their spouse, I couldn't get anything done today. I just too much recognition.
Yeah.
Getting too much praise, balloons, cakes, it was crazy. It just doesn't happen. And the frequency of recognition as it goes up, and what we've found is retention goes up, right? Satisfaction goes up. Now, when it came to engagement, you had to do it right.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't just great job. It was specific. It was timely. It was meaningful, and so on. So there is a discipline, and that's what we get to in the other section in the book.
Yeah.
Where we say, look, how do you do it? You have to see what's going on, and then you have to express it in a meaningful way, which makes sense.
So the first part are all these myths. So what are the most sort of popular myths? So you said fear is a motivator. What else is a popular myth?
Compensation, if I pay them well,
Mm-hmm.
right? Time is a big one. I just don't have
people time off.
Well, time to do it. I don't have time and which is fascinating because they say, look, Steve's doing a great job. He's knocking it out of the park. You can't find the time to say, hey, Steve, you're doing a great job. Well, I would like to say, well, now, if Steve screws up, how much time you got for him now?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm on that, on a heartbeat.
Yeah.
So often we're quick to criticize and slow to recognize because as leaders, we think I'm solving problems.
For sure.
Well, one of the other myths is that people just need too much recognition these days. The younger generation, they're just soft.
Uh-huh.
And you say, look, the fact that people want a lot of feedback is a positive thing.
Yeah.
And actually, psychologists have showed us that people that want a lot of affirmation actually have a really healthy regard for their talents and what they do. And these positive affirmations help to spur those things along the way. So, there are a lot of myths. We go through 7 that we found were the most common, and we debunk each one as we go through. And even the leaders that use it, when confronted, go, yeah, I know. It's
Yeah.
easier for me to say that and make an excuse than it is to develop the skill.
It's so easy to say, oh, that makes sense, it's a no-brainer, but like to really embody it, oh man, I've got to tell you. So we have kids, and my wife and I are doing this practice where we want to acknowledge and give gratitude to our kids at a time of when it is the hardest, right? Like when they're the most like pent up, like they've got a lot of energy and they're being, the most naughtiest, to find the right things. Honestly, and I've seen this early in my career, it was very, because the people that I modeled my career off of it early in my career, they were not good at gratitude. They were just like, they just barked orders. And then they just told you, like, do this and you better do it. You didn't even go back for questions because you didn't want to get yelled at, right? So that's what like I was like early in my career, and I didn't realize, like, whoa, people need to press pause. You need to like look at the good things and like don't start with criticisms, right? Like all of these things, and I realized that like it takes, if it's not intuitive to you, it takes a lot of here in order to get it out. Like it's almost like you need to put yourself aside, right, in order to really embrace this. Is that what you see?
Exactly. I like to talk about 2 words. You have to be very intentional and you have to be disciplined. The best leaders took time to walk in their employees' shoes. That's one of our seeing, right?
Yeah.
To really understand what's being done so that you don't make ridiculous demands, and understand how hard the job can be. We also talk about assume positive intent, and this works great with your kids too.
Yeah.
They're kids, give them a break. They're trying to be good. It's just that they've been indoors all day, and finally it just, they just explode. And that's okay. They're kids. Hubert Joly, one of the leaders that we interviewed for the book, he took Best Buy from $1 billion deficit to $1 billion surplus.
Yeah.
And he says, look, I may be naive. I just assume people come to work wanting to do a good job.
Yeah.
And in trying to do a good job, they make mistakes. And you know what? That's fine. We can correct the mistakes and move on.
For sure.
Tremendous results. He says, purpose-driven work where people feel safe to make mistakes. Because when you're in a punitive culture where every time you make a mistake, you get hammered, you're not going to take any chances. You're not going to take any risks. It shuts down all that creativity.
Yeah.
It shuts down all that goodwill that you want to flow from your employees to your customers.
Yeah.
So, not leading with gratitude is very dangerous if you really do want to grow and be innovative.
I also found that like it creates a light culture too, right? Like it feels light walking into the office. It feels like all of your interactions with folks are in this sort of, I don't know, it just feels better being in an environment like that, right? And you can turn a cubicle culture that has gratitude in it into something that feels warm.
Exactly. I love the way you put that. It feels light. Because, when we're in a tough culture, it's burdensome to come to work. It's heavy.
Yeah.
You're always guarding, what did she really mean when she said that? How do I make sure that I don't get in on anybody's radar screen? And, I'll tell you, the thing that we found with great leaders as well is that when the time came to express that gratitude, they knew their team, they knew their players. In other words, they gave them gratitude in a way, or recognition, appreciation in a way that was meaningful to them. Like for you, for example, you've got young kids. Great reward for you would be a day off, right, to spend with your kids.
Yeah.
For other people, depending what their careers are, it might be an extra assignment to work on product development, or
Absolutely. Yeah.
to go to a conference and learn more about a specific.
Traveling, right? Like they get to go on a business trip. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Exactly. Or have a mentor, whatever it might be. This idea that, one size fits all doesn't work. I'll give you a classic example. A friend of mine was working in Detroit, always wanted to work in New York, interviews with the home office in New York, gets the job, comes back to his wife. They're all excited. Next day, a package shows up from his new manager. He goes, oh, how great is that? Opens it up. It's a great big bottle of champagne. How lovely. Guy was in AA.
Oh.
So, so now, the manager, clearly new manager, didn't know that, wanted to do something nice. Intent was great, execution faltered. You can imagine that, had he known him a little better and said, hey, I know you and your wife love to go out to a great restaurant. I want you to find the finest restaurant in Detroit. Yeah. Take your wife out, celebrate, send me the bill. That little extra question, that little extra step. Know your players. Know how to engage them.
Yeah, absolutely. And know what pulls them, what pushes them, what frightens them, every time I feel like I don't know my team and my staff, like it's because I'm not spending enough time with them. If I'm assuming too much about them, it's because I'm not spending enough time.
Exactly. And that's a key there. Time. And by the way, it doesn't mean that, hey, we're going to block out 3 hours, we're going to hold hands and sing Kumbaya and do the trust falls, right? Yeah. It's literally can be just a few minutes at your desk or your cubicle and just say, hey, Steve, just checking in with you. How are things going with clients? I love great leaders ask 2 questions, right? How are you doing? How can I help?
Yeah.
Just how are you doing? How can I help?
Yeah.
Right? It can be that simple. Another interesting discovery when we looked at great cultures was that often as leaders, we think that recognition always has to be top down, right? It's all from me and I'm seeing what's going on. In the really healthy cultures, a culture of gratitude, it goes sideways. It cross-pollinates. It's peer-to-peer. And I'll give you a great example. We had a manager in Dallas, Texas, Carlos Aguilera. And his best practice, and to make sure he was seeing all the little things that were going right every day, is he would put 10 pennies in his left pocket. And he would set a goal to have 10 positive interactions with his people. And he'd keep moving a penny from his left pocket to his right pocket. A simple little trigger, right, to recognize. Well, when everybody has 10 pennies in their pockets, it's even better, right? Because as a leader, you can't hope to see everything that's going on. In your team huddles, a good friend of ours, Bill Manning, up in Toronto. He's the president of Toronto FC, the MLS soccer team. Mm-hmm. And he says, I call my team together. I give out my awards, and I call somebody randomly out of the team and say, who do you want to recognize? What a great best practice. Anybody here want to give somebody a shout out for something they did that was really helpful? So once you get all eyes and ears looking at those positive things, that's where you really feel connected. And it doesn't. And as a leader, by the way, you don't have to worry that you've missed something, right? Yeah. I'm recognizing Susan's going to be upset because Susan did the same thing. I just didn't see it. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And that's another brilliant best practice. For sure. And it celebrate the little milestones along the way.
Yeah. Yeah. And you said, give it now, give it often. Don't be afraid.
Yes. Yeah. Give it now, give it often. You see all the little things, build momentum. Like you've got kids, I'm guessing they play soccer or basketball or something. Yeah. And when you go to their games, do you make sure you don't cheer until the final score?
Yeah.
And we laugh at that. We say, well, that would be stupid. And yet in business, we do that all the time.
In business, we do that all the time.
All the time. Hey, I closed the sale. Good. We're halfway to quota. Get back to work.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yet, with our kids, we go, hey, when they put the shoes on the right feet, we're cheering for them, and create that momentum to get you to the big goals. Those milestones along the way, I think, is a wonderful best practice.
You have a chapter called Reinforce Core Values. So what if you're a small business entrepreneur and you don't really have the big McKinsey core values articulated out, right? Like, how can you reinforce core values that your employees know and it could be articulated, and it's something that's reinforced.
See, in those cases, I think you need to get some simple core values, right? How are we impacting, our customers, each other, our communities? I love the ones that are simple. Here's one off the top of my head: hustle for good.
Yeah.
Really, right? It's simple. It's to the point. There's a great clothing company for camping where their motto is "Do good."
Do good. Yeah.
Do good.
Yeah.
We work with Texas Roadhouse. The restaurants.
The restaurant. Yeah.
Yeah, and theirs is legendary service, legendary food.
Yeah.
Simple. So get to that. And so when you have excellent service or innovative or whatever it might be, make sure that that's part of it, because rewarded behavior gets repeated. We all know that, right? Whether you're, with your kids or at work or training your dog, right?
Yeah.
And so you want to make sure you reward the right behaviors, and the core values helps you identify what those core behaviors are to make sure that you keep recognizing them. And by the way, right now, more than ever, those core behaviors keep people connected, right?
Yeah.
You can have more and more people working remotely. So as you touch base and you can bring in those core values, it's a way to keep people connected on a regular basis as you've got more and more people working from home.
Yeah, which is one of the questions that I wanted to ask you. Like these days, we're living in an uncertain time, right? And how like if you're a leader, your life has changed, right? Like if you're an individual, right? But in the leadership sense, like your life, your business has changed. Like why is this even more important now than ever?
More important now than ever to keep your people connected first and foremost.
Yeah.
They're working from home, lots of distractions, schools are out, right? Make sure you're following up on a regular basis. You're working on personal goals, you're working on business goals, and you're very clear about what's going on there. So keeping them connected. Secondly is sharing everything. A lack of openness and honesty is really going to shut people down, right? And that instills some fear. So create a practice to send regular updates daily if you can. Here's where we are. Here's what's going on. Here's how things have changed. I mean, you've seen it. Daily things change. Markets are swinging up and down. Being able to get to work changes on a dime. So really sharing everything and being really honest and open about that is really key. We talked about look for small wins. The big stuff is going to get pushed further and further out. And so the little things like we've got a really good video system at work now. Plug into it. We're going to have updates, every morning and every afternoon to track where we are. So everybody's on the same page. Everybody knows what to do. Small wins. Closed another account. In the midst of all this crazy, Steve's been doing a great job. Yeah. So the little wins. And then lastly, and I think this is so important, is to stay optimistic. We're making progress. Other countries, they've peaked. They're coming back to normal. We're going to get there. We're going to push through. Take care of your family. Take care of yourself. Make sure we're staying connected. Let's be focused. You're working from home. We're going to have a little more time. You don't have that lost time in commute or whatever. So, we look at those four things. Really important now. And, first and foremost, stay connected, right? Share everything. Make sure you're looking for small wins, and then stay optimistic. There's so much bad news out there. Find the positives.
Yeah.
My dad's favorite old song, right? Accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative, and don't mess with Mr. In Between.
What's your big intent with this book? What do you hope people really walk away with, and or the practice that they adopt?
Such a great question, and a couple of things really. One is that we can create more civil workplaces and just more civil communities. My favorite data point is when you're happy and engaged and motivated at work, you're 150% to be happy, engaged, and motivated in your personal life, because we spend so much time at work. And it's become so easy to be cruel, whether it's a mean tweet or meme or, even the political discourse, no matter where you are in the spectrum, it's vicious. the online bullying, even the bullying in schools. We're seeing more and more kids feel isolated and alone, and depression is up. Look, as leaders, we can be a part of the solution. We can create really engaging workplaces where we believe what we do matters, and we're honored for our hard work. We're celebrated, right? And then secondly is that these wonderful best practices, and this is the last section of the book, and my favorite. Every great culture we studied, every great leader we studied, they didn't leave their best selves at work. They took them home. So at the end of the book, we've got the baker's dozen, 13 best practices for you and your family to express gratitude in your personal lives. So our goals are, better, more engaging, more civil and grateful places to work that bleed into better, more engaged, more meaningful, more grateful places to live. And that's our mission, and that's my sermon, and I'm sticking to it. Steve, can I get an amen?
Amen. That was great. No, I love this book, and I think it's so important right now more than ever. For people that follow me, they know that I have a gratitude practice, like write down 5 things every day. And I think, and that's the first thing that I do in the morning. And it's something that, like, at least for me, like it puts the intention on the good stuff in the morning. Because if you definitely pay attention to the news and you're a leader, it's a hard thing to swallow, right? And so
the news will not cheer you up. If you are looking to get cheered up, do not go to your news feed. Exactly. Singularity University did a study. 90% of the news you get is negative. 90%. Yeah. And yet, think about it. Has it ever been a more amazing time to be alive?
I know. And despite everything, it's still a great time to be alive.
Yes, and the joy that your children and your family bring you, and the sunshine. We just started today a best practice where we're going to take a picture of something that we found today that was beautiful, and we're going to post it to our friends and family. The gratitude journal is one of our 13 best practices.
That's great.
Here's one of my favorites. I'll give you 2 because I know we're getting close to wrapping up here. But
yeah,
a good friend of mine, Dave Kirpin in New York, he's got 2 kids like you. And he said, dinner time, we try to eat dinner as often as we could. And yet the conversation was never that stimulating. We say, how was school? Fine. What did you do? Nothing. Right? So he said, we now have 3 questions you have to answer at dinner. First one is, what was the best part of your day? Right? Get a little brag about the best part of your day. Second, who are you grateful for that's not at the table? And then thirdly, who are you grateful for at the table that hasn't been thanked yet?
Yeah.
And he said, at first it was like, oh, dad. He said, it changed the spirit. It changed the feeling at our dinner table. Everybody got to talk about it. He says, I knew it was catching on when my kids would invite a friend to dinner and they'd say, okay, you have to answer 3 questions. So be prepared. Okay. Have some good answers. It changed the spirit. I love that. And then another one I think particularly important for this time is to embrace hard times.
Yeah.
To be grateful for challenges. As we interview great leaders, and I know you do all the time, you say, tell me about your career. They always go to the hard times. Why? Because that's where they learned the most. That's where they grew the most. So we are in hard times. Yeah. Now is the time. Let's embrace it. What can we learn? How will this make us stronger? How will this make us better? Those best practices that work so well at work, don't forget to bring them home. It's so important.
So that's amazing, and I love that call to action. The fact that you included the 13 steps as part of your book. I want to shift gears for a second, and this is kind of a last thing is that, like, so I have a mission and a purpose with Hustle for Good is to ignite entrepreneurs to create purpose-driven businesses that make a profit and give back, right? Right. Layer on your leading with gratitude sort of position. How would you take your core tenets and apply it to the thing that I'm looking to build?
Well, I think you're spot on that, people more and more, as we looked at our motivators assessments and what are the key motivators for younger generations, it's impact, learning, and family. And impact is huge, not just the impact we're having on our customers or maybe our bottom line. How are we making the community a better place? Purpose-driven work, that's going to attract a lot of great talent, and it engages people emotionally. You know what I mean? We go out and we build a house for Habitat for Humanity. We help, at a soup kitchen. We collect clothes for the homeless, whatever it might be. That taking the profits and some of the talent in your business and giving it back to the community. You know who does this really, really well is American Express.
Yeah.
In each of their departments, they've adopted different charities and they actually go out into the community and give back. The Philadelphia 76ers give their employees 76 hours of paid leave.
Wow.
To work in the community. They also own the New Jersey Devils. They give them 82 hours because the Devils came to the New Jersey in 1982. And this idea that we're going to invest in our communities and we're going to invest in you and give you a chance to do some good in the community, and it doesn't cost you anything.
Yeah.
Those are, who's not proud to say I work at the Sixers or at American Express or the New Jersey Devils hockey team? When you do that much good, do you think when you come back to work, you give a little extra?
Absolutely.
Of course you do. So I think it aligns perfectly. We're grateful for the industries we're in, the products that we have. We're grateful for our people, and we're grateful for our communities, and we want to make sure to give back. Why wouldn't we? We can, we do, and we do it graciously, and we're grateful for the opportunity.
Well, Chester, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your book. And how can people follow you? You have website, Instagram, Twitter?
Absolutely. All of the above. Big following on LinkedIn. So I encourage you to follow us on LinkedIn. We have a wonderful training company, thecultureworks.com. When your culture works, everything else works. I encourage you to go there. And we have a wonderful website specifically for the book called leadingwithgratitudebook.com. We have a lot of free downloads. You can obviously get the book at fine bookstores everywhere, and Amazon, Books A Million, Apple, and so on. It's available in audio. So avail yourself of it. We pride ourselves in it's an easy read. It's a lovely read. There are great data, great case studies and stories, and more importantly, then tools for you to take it back to where you live and work and implement these wonderful strategies. So I can't thank you enough for having me on your show and letting me spread the gospel of gratitude, my brother, and
Awesome.
Appreciate you disseminating it to your followers as well. It's been a delight.
I appreciate anybody that took the time to write a book about gratitude, because it's something that I lead and I live with, and do my best to basically drink it every day, right? And so,
and in closing, I just want to feed on that, because I'll tell you, there's one thing we all have in common on this planet. Whether we're parking cars or we're captains of industry or checking out groceries at the grocery store, what we all have in common? We all want to be happy.
Yeah.
And if you treat everybody that you meet as if they've got something going on, you're probably right. If you've got kids, you got something going on, right? And so this idea of let's be more kind. Let's assume positive intent about people. Let's do little things every day to make somebody else's life a little lighter. I love your expression. Take a little bit of their burden off. You know what? We can all do that. And I think now more than ever, it's incumbent on us to look out for our neighbors, look out for each other, be kind, be gracious, be grateful. Let's make the world a better place.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chester. It was so awesome talking to you. And yeah, everybody go and check out Leading with Gratitude, and there'll be a link to get it in the show notes here. All right. Talk to you soon. Thank you.
You bet. Cheers.